what we do in the history of winter is we apply stratigraphy. The geologic stratigraphy helps us to understand the history of the Earth. Consequently, the stratigraphy of the snow on the ground and in the thickness of the lake ice helps us to understand the history of winter. Over the years, since 2001, we've had many different kinds of groups, mostly teachers, and the main idea is to embed them. Don't teach them how to teach, but give them scientific content and have a real understanding of how science is done using snow and ice. So we put together a team. I'm Peter Wasilewski, a scientist here at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. And I started this whole thing with the help of Dr. Gabbries, who is Director of Education here at Goddard Space Flight Center. And I got an old buddy from my first trip to the Antarctic, Tony Gao, who is now retired from the U.S. Army Cold Regions Laboratory in Hanover, New Hampshire. And then along the way, we have Eric Irby from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and Alan Lunsford, who's our kind of techno expert, also from working here at the Goddard Space Flight Center. And then Mary Ingelang has been added most recently, who's dealing with winter ecology. So with the science team that we've assembled, we feel that we can deliver a very effective program to teachers, to college professors, to teachers in training. And that's our main goal. The time spent at Lake Placid is really carefully designed. Some of the minimal amount of time is spent indoors in the so-called classroom setting. Most of the time is spent outdoors. And we apply the same basic techniques that NASA scientists, NOAA scientists, and weather scientists use to study the snow and ice. And it's almost like ground validation to verify the accuracy of sensors on NASA satellites that look down at the biosphere. So there's a very good connection between what we do up there and what NASA does here at the Goddard Space Flight Center.
Hello everyone, I'm Catherine Bender and I'm with the Goddard Education Office, Education Specialist or Program Planning Analyst, I think is what they call me now. And I've been working with the History of Winter program now for, I guess, 12, this is coming up now for HAL 2015 will be my 13th year with it. HAL's been operating at Goddard, or through Goddard Space Flight Center since 2001. And what it's really known as is an educator professional development program with a main purpose of providing teachers with a field research experience. So what we fondly call it, the term that we've coined is teacher as scientist. A big part, and you'll find, or at least we found, so I'll share it with you if you haven't had a chance to look into some of the education research for this, but one of the prime, I guess, you could say the impetus for changes with the next generation science standards from, or evolving from the National Science Education Standards. With the National Science Education Standards and a focus on inquiry, and science is inquiry, and so we were hit with that terminology for so many times. Well, of course science is inquiry. You're asking questions. You're trying to come up with ways to find out the answers to those questions. And that leads to the next question, and you continue on. With the next gen standards, a movement more towards, well, let's understand that process that's involved. Let's live that process. So you end up with looking then to the performance of that process. So the performance expectations for the students. How are they actually going to be going about it? Well, one thing that was found to be lacking in the movement from the start of the science education standards is the fact that with inquiry, it's really hard to teach it. if you really haven't experienced it yourself. It would be like, you know, trying to pull an entire skill set for any type of trade or other profession if you did not have the experience yourself. So what we try to do with History of Winter is to bring teachers into a setting where they're working alongside scientists, those, as Peter mentioned in the video, from NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, then also from CREL, the Cold Regions Research and Engineering Lab, which is part of the Army Corps of Engineers, and then also from a few universities and all as we tie in. But teachers working alongside the scientists, leaving the classroom behind for a period of time, and focusing in on how you actually do science. So for many teachers, if I could just, you know, ask all of you, do a quick little poll. How many of you, of those of you particularly that are science teachers or, you know, all within STEM in some way, how many of you have had an experience doing field research of some sort? And then if you keep those hands up, and then if everybody who teaches science would raise their hands. It's something that at one point, whether in, you know, however folks come into the science teaching profession, there are a lot of different paths. If you had not had that opportunity through a college program, that's one of the reasons why this History of Winter program was created. Because it's something that you can add in to your experience set really at any time. And it ends up, I think one of the things that I find, I myself am a past science teacher. I spent 19 years in the classroom. If I was still in the classroom, this would be my 33rd year. So I've been, if you do the math, and I've been at Goddard here for quite a while working with them. But something that I myself had that experience because I started in science and then came into education. And I know from the point at which I was leading a department and hiring other teachers and seeing a difference in my young teachers from those that had a science background from their college experience or a lab background or second career folks that we'd hired on who were getting their teaching credentials but had something to do with science. There are all different kinds of approaches to how then they work with their students and the understanding of how to have those students actually experience science process. So this program, History of Winter, tries to give that opportunity to more folks. And so basically what it involves, the video at the start there, I don't like being tied to a podium, but I am kind of with this microphone now. Basically what we do is we take you away for a week to Lake Placid, New York. And you might wonder, like, Lake Placid, New York? Okay, I remember, how many of you remember vividly the Miracle on Ice? Okay, so certainly getting a lot of its notoriety because of the Winter Olympics taking place there. And actually that had a lot to do with the choice of Lake Placid. What we're really interested in from a NASA perspective is Adirondack ice and snow. And at this point, we now have a 15-year record of Adirondack ice and snow based on the data we've collected through the History of Winter program each February. And one of the main points, and one thing that we try to do, is it's working itself into and becoming part of a satellite validation. We actually are partnered at this point now, not just the Goddard Education Office, but we work with Code 615 here, which is the Cryosphere Sciences Lab. And so all the ice and snow missions that NASA puts up are actually contributing now to History of Winter. And so we get some of our additional scientists and for instance, our lead scientist now, Laura Koenig, is within the cryosphere and one of the program scientists for the Operation Ice Bridge, which, have you all heard about Ice Bridge at all? It's just as it sounds, a bridge mission between ISAT and ISAT-2. And basically what it looks at is the frozen part of the Earth and actually measuring thickness of ice around the world. And so each of the cryosphere missions, as they come and go, are looking to support having teachers learn a bit more about science processes and science field research through the context of ice and snow. So back to Lake Placid, because it's in the Adirondacks, it's one of those areas that we actually needed some more data for. Having a 15-year record now means that we've passed the point where we would have just a weather record and we would actually be able to call it a climate record. 10 years usually being the magic number there. And what we do, and the collaboration that we've had up there, is with the Olympic Regional Development Association, which actually made the Olympics happen. And then also the place where we stay, and really without which we would have a really tough time duplicating the program, and that's the Northwood School. So you would, I think in the video, saw a few scenes of the school. The school itself is a private school. It's a residential one. It's been around for more than 100 years. And up there, it's actually known as a private school where if you want to learn winter sports and maybe even make it onto the U.S. Olympic team in some way, Northwood School is one of the places where you'd want to go. Ever since the Winter Olympics started, they have had an alum from Northwood School there. Instead of football teams, they have 4 ice hockey teams, they have 4 ski teams, and that kind of thing. It's a big push. They're closed during the week that we're up there. It's their winter break, right around the time when normally the Empire Games would be going on. And so we take over the school. We live in the students, we borrow student dorm rooms. They have a fabulous cafeteria and basically give us run of the facility while we're there, and their grounds and all their equipment and everything else. We spend part of the time inside just to get everybody oriented to technology that we're using, processes that we're using, protocols that we're using, and then it's outside. And we basically teach the how to go about building a quinsy, and we monitor temperatures through that and use the same device called a thermochron in order to monitor temp, then in snowpack as well. We teach you how to dig a snow pit, how to get information about the record that snow, as it has packed over the winter time up to that point in February, what we can learn about the winter season itself, and then also lake ice cores, so that we actually look then at literally the history of winter, that current season, based on the record that is frozen in the ice. In doing all that, again, working alongside scientists who, for instance, Tony Gao, who is retired from Cold Regions Research and Engineering Lab, who essentially the protocols we're following for the thin ice sections that we do are the ones that he established as part of the GIST, or the Greenland ice core that was done, and then also for the Antarctic cores, which he participated in through his science career. Peter Wasilewski, who is now also retired from Goddard, here, he'd been one of our planetary scientists, a geologist by background, and meteorites are actually what his specialty is, working in planetary magnetism. His love of ice and snow came from his search and hunt for meteorites in Antarctica. And so he had taken that piece and a grand interest in education and supporting schools and teachers and students, and turned that into a program so that we could get more and more teachers on board and actually involved and excited about NASA missions and the earth science that NASA does. How do you become a part of this? You fill out an application. We'll make those available through Dr. Morgan later in the summer, correct, when you're at Immaculata, when you all reconvene. And essentially, the application, you let us know a little bit about your background, your teaching experience, and then why you feel this would be a beneficial opportunity for you and for your students. Looking particularly to those that want to see how they can incorporate more of these performance type experiential learning opportunities for their students into their classroom. So what we found, and I have a couple of HOW alums here in the audience, fortunately, and I'll let them tell you a little bit about their experience there this year or in a past year, if you're feeling so inclined, Dan, and give you an idea of just what it meant to them to be able to participate. Sarah, you want to start? You want to say something?
Sure. I teach 4th grade, so when I went, I wasn't sure, doing all these ICE studies and graphs and things, and I thought, how would I ever apply this? And it actually turned out to be everything we used, I was able to take back and use in my classroom for not only science and math, but they wrote about it, so it was in literature. And the tools they give you was just fantastic. So anytime it snowed, we studied the snowflakes and the ice and everything. It was just one of the best experiences because you were doing it and you can adjust it to any grade level. We were there with what? High school teachers.
All those.
Yeah, Desmond, feel free to jump in.
What do you think?
I think that to sum it up, when I got back to my own school and I was able to present to some of the other teachers, to validate going, not that I need validation, but it seemed like anyone I presented to was like, how do I get to do this? It seemed like anyone that saw the pictures or learned about the experience was like, I'm so jealous of what you were able to do. And that just speaks words to what you're learning as well as the overall experience. I thought it was like a once-in-a-lifetime experience for me that I've never had any type of chance to do before. And the network of people and connections that we made there is just phenomenal. I was just telling Catherine that some of the NASA and Hope Region scientists have been Skyping with my classroom, and it's just an incredible opportunity not only for us as educators, but our students to get that type of personal experience.
Dan?
Where are we at with the history of song? we have a high interest in the history of song. If you're like me, I thought I was acclimated to winter in southwestern Pennsylvania, and when I drove up the interstate and got in the Adirondack Mountains, I was in for a surprise. It's a different thermocline up there, but it was adventurous. I'm always up for an adventure. I'm ex-Navy, so I'm up for an adventure. And boy, was it was a great experience to be working with scientists. And there's no commitment, how little or how much you do with it. One of the things that worked for me very well in elementary school is they give you a magnifying lens and a card and go out during a snow session and actually see the crystals and see the shapes. And from an elementary perspective, I see a lot of the elementary teachers cutting out snowflakes and hanging them on the wall, getting around Christmas time, but to actually take that little piece of technology outside with your kid, to see that it's just moving to them. And likewise, like Desmond said, I mean, you could go as far as interacting with the scientists and Skyping and emailing and sharing and collaborating. So I mean, there's from very simple to very complex, you could be involved with it. It changed me as a teacher to actually work with scientists and actually see the science. And I would question Dr. Lindsay, like, well, what are we gaining from looking at the snow drift binding, looking at different crystals and all that? And like Vidya said, it's validation with the satellites, and there's a good link there. And certainly here with Goddard, you go on Goddard's site and maybe collaborate with that data and see, what actually happened on the ground compared to what these satellites are bringing in. Again, that's another teachable moment you can use in your classroom with your kids. So, and the other thing about it is just as much intensity and activity with the work in the study, there's also ample time for fun time too. And if you're a winter person, there's lots of fun things to do. And everybody, no one that I've talked to that's been up to the Gulf or up to Lake Placid, no one ever complains about ice pump. And I was scared to death to do it, but I managed to get my body up there. And it's like climbing Mount Everest when you make it up there and you say, wow, you know, this was a challenge. So good mix of fun, good mix of learning and education, and definitely another thing that says networking with friends that you make and network that you establish.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions at this point? Anybody interested? Think about it and just see. As I said, we'll get the application out to everyone through Dr. Morgan and your program, and then basically that comes back in to me by the end of the year. And as I said, the week is in February, and I believe it's like the 9th through the 15th coming up. I've got the right time. And, you know, at any time you can email me and get more information, or, you know, contact me that way. I'll be sure to, well, I can tell you my email address really easily. It's Catherine with a K, HEHERINE.J.Bender@nasa.gov. But I can have Dr. Felicia Marie send it out so that's available to everyone with my phone and all as well. Let me leave you with one more video that kind of gives you another perspective on it, particularly on why NASA is really interested in ice and snow, and kind of what the whole point of that is.
I'm your host, Amber Whalen. Ever wish your teacher could just get out of town for a week? I know I did. Well, you know, there are all kinds of workshops and conferences and things that you can suggest to them. But what about one that can really help them understand more about what scientists do day to day? Well, here's one for you to mention, The History of Winter in Lake Placid, New York. And guess what? It's sponsored by NASA. Here's Peggy Mayer, Aerospace Education Specialist, telling us more about History of Winter, or how.
History of Winter Project is a workshop and follow-up activities that are web-based that really intends to introduce teachers to the science behind the study of snow and ice, and to do it as scientists rather than as teachers, so that they have a chance to do some authentic science and to share that with their students, not just in the study of snow and ice, but in kind of every aspect of what they're teaching. I hope they get a chance to maybe step away from being a teacher for a little while and to be a scientist instead.
Scientist. You know, in a lot of cases, your teachers don't get to spend a whole lot of time being scientists. They go right from being told what to do in their labs in college to telling you what to do in your labs. Not a lot of time in between for their own research. But at HOW, participants get to do all kinds of research, like measuring densities of snow in snow pits, bubble layers in ice, diagramming snowflakes, even finding out about the science behind ice climbing. But hold on. Why does NASA care about all this snow and ice? Well, it turns out that the snow and ice are part of something scientists call the cryosphere. The term cryosphere describes all the parts of Earth where water is found in solid form. That includes sea ice, river ice, snow glaciers, and ice sheets. Even the frozen ground and permafrost areas are part of the cryosphere. And the cryosphere is an important part of Earth's global climate system. Here's Peggy again to explain.
Well, NASA does a lot of Earth science, and Goddard Space Flight Center, where I work, actually has more Earth scientists than any place in the world, all in one spot. So we have the Earth observing missions, including missions that study snow and ice. We have a satellite called ICESat that just studies snow and ice, and we have instruments on other satellites that study ice along with snow cover and that sort of thing, along with other kinds of terrain. So NASA is very interested in all aspects of the Earth. NASA is not just about manned spaceflight. We have a lot of other science going on.
And why is it important to NASA to include teachers? Here's Dr. Peter Wasilewski, one of the founders of HOW.
The future of the NASA workforce depends on, very clever, innovative kids growing up into first-class scientists. And I think that there's a lot of people in the NASA organization, all the way up and down the structure, that look on, and there's a very strong emphasis on STEM education.
Wonder what Peter means when he talks about STEM? In this context, STEM identifies science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And not just these topics standing alone. It really looks at how science, technology, engineering, and mathematics relate to each other and are connected to solve problems. With all the high-tech exploration NASA does, it's no wonder they want students with best ideas and a great STEM background to come to work at NASA. The teachers at Howe are trained to think and act like scientists, and then they return to their classrooms to teach their students to do the same. These teachers and students help NASA and others look more carefully at snow and log their observations. Teachers, students, and citizen scientists all help gather sets of global data that help scientists learn about the dynamics of our atmosphere and help them predict climate changes. Unique patterns of snowflakes can actually help meteorologists track a storm's movement. But studying snow? That's all well and good. At least if you live in an area that gets snow regularly. What if you're down in Florida or New Orleans or Arizona or somewhere that's not frigid in the winter? What do you care about all the snow and ice?
We practice the history of winter in Lake Placid, New York, but the same principles can be applied to anywhere. And it doesn't really matter, the basic concepts, the basic tools, the basic attitude, geologic history, history of winter, same basic principles. All we're doing is using different tools, but asking the same basic questions. Now, these same basic ideas and same attitudes can be applied to spring, fall, summer, just a different approach. Even if you're not a scientist, ultimately, it makes you a better discerning citizen. We need a lot more of that.
Okay, I get it. Scientific studies help us think critically, and practicing scientific procedures helps us to apply what we know in new situations. What we learn about ice here on Earth could be applied in ice on, say, Mars or Enceladus. And hey, even though experts say that the amount of new technical information is now doubling every 2 years, those scientific skills aren't. So remember, that's the history of winter. Mention it to your teachers. It might get them out of the classroom for a week and help them become better teachers and help make you a better student. So it's a win-win for everybody. Oh, and if you don't like your teacher, hey, it gets really cold up there. Just saying. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. I'm Amber Whalen, and we'll catch you next time on NASA Launchpad.
So I hope when it comes time with those applications coming out that you'll consider. And again, I'll make sure that you have my contact info, and actually my contact info will be on the application too, if you have any other questions or anything about it. Okay? I'm going to give you about a couple minutes just to stand and stretch.